Okay.
Yeah.
So that's proving the model. You need to create a standard operating procedure that you can take and go, okay, I can price this and I can go from there. Okay.
Yep.
So in order to do that, you need to figure out how to measure your business to the smallest possible unit, right? So getting into that, I'm going to give you 3 examples, 2 that I know and 1 that I'm just totally spitballing at.
Okay.
1 is trucking. So in trucking, our smallest measurable unit that we go to is the mile. So for every 1 mile our trucks drive, and each truck drives between 10 and 12,000 miles a month, and then times that by 60, 70 trucks now and in the future, 80, 100, whatever. It doesn't actually matter once you go down to the mile, right? Some people might go down to the truck. So they break it.
Wouldn't a kilometer be smaller than a mile?
A kilometer would be smaller than a mile, but the mile... Funny guy.
Yeah, sorry.
Very good, Tyler. Break my train of thought.
Sorry.
So we use the mile. We do a lot of stuff in the United States. The majority of our stuff is interstate, between the States and Canada. And so because they're a bigger economy,
right,
we talk in mile. It's been that way.
Makes sense.
Trucking was based on the mile, even in Canada, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, before the kilometer became popular anyway. So the mile is the breaking point that we break it down to. You could break it down to per truck, but then now it becomes very nuanced again by what's different about that truck, what is different about that driver, what is different about what that truck did for work this trip. You could break it down per trip.
It introduces more variables.
Yeah, you have more variables. Well, when I go by the mile, there's only so many variables that I can break down in a singular mile, right? So, and yes, there's always going to be nuance, but what's the smallest thing I can break it into?
So you're trying to break it down to the smallest possible integer with the fewest amount of variables.
Yeah,
involved.
Ideally, but more importantly, the smallest, right? Because if I do 1 mile or if I do 500,000 miles, which is about what we're doing as a company a month right now, now I can adjust my expenses and my revenues to those statistics. It's a scalable model.
Yeah.
So if I get the smallest possible unit, I could scale that to 10 million miles a month for what it comes to, as long as my numbers are correct at that baseline.
Yeah.
Right. So for example, when we break down our mile, we go, okay, what is our maintenance cost per mile? And we quantify that and we check that weekly, monthly, annually, and we are constantly watching and adjusting that. What does it cost for me to run fuel per mile? How much fuel do we burn every single mile on average? So then we take our truck's individual fuel mileages, we average our fleet fuel mileage, we average our fleet fuel cost, and we calculate that weekly so that we know what it's costing. How much do we pay our drivers per mile? What does it cost per mile to run the driver up there? What is the truck cost per mile? And that's payments, that's depreciation, that's interest. What is the overhead of the company costing the truck per mile? So we have a dispatch office. That office has to be there in order for them to operate. So what does that cost per mile to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so we break down each of these things, and there's a few more, and there's things that we segregate out, maybe like tires, insurance and registration, permits and tolls. Like we break all those things down into per mile. So you might have 8 to 10 breaks, but then we get a total expense cost of what it costs us to operate per mile, right?
Yeah.
And so then we would take it like an average truck in a month, and we go, okay, well, if our fleet's averaging 10,000 miles a month per truck, then we can use that as a baseline of what we can expect to spend. So we use it to budget looking forward, and we use it to project and price our individual clients. So from that per mile, we create a benchmark that we want to be here, and this is how much we want to make in profit, give or take, on our unit. And then I can give that to my employees. It's like, okay, this is how you price. I need you to price at $3.30 a mile. So when you run around and a customer is asking for a product, there might be some other variables, but this is where we got to be. This is the bottom. If we do it for less than this, we're going to lose money, and everything from here up to here is potential profit, but this is where I want you to be.
Right. Okay.
So now I can add 1 truck, 2 truck, 3 truck, 4 truck, 5 truck. And as long as there's work for those trucks, I know whether they're making money or not off of that unit. So now I'm not afraid to add another truck. So if I had another truck tomorrow and I know what that truck costs per mile to operate, I know what the driver costs per mile, I know what the fuel, I know all these variables, then I know that if I get it out there and I get it at this $1 per mile and I can do that, that it's going to
You'll be making money. Yep.
Right. And it's oversimplifying something, but that's how it works. Now let's go into the heavy duty mechanic shop. We break that down by the hour in the mechanic shop. Some people might do it another way, but basically we go, there's a certain number of available hours per mechanic. There's an efficiency that we expect to make on each mechanic. And then there's a amount of parts we typically sell on average per hour of shop time that goes in there.
Right.
So when I hire, when I go, should we hire another mechanic? Yeah, we're so busy. We got so much work right now. I could totally put another man to work. Okay. So I know if we pay that man this much, this is how much the space costs for him of shop floor space. This is how much his supplies cost. This is how much parts we're going to sell. And this is the margin that we're going to make on those. Well, I know if he's at $150 an hour at 80% efficiency, which is an average that I have from over the year, then I know if he comes in and works 180 hours this month, I'm going to get this many hours billed, and that's going to translate to this many parts sales, and I can break it all down. And I know I'm very confident to hire another guy and add him, because I know that if I had him and I've proven the model of the truck or the model of the mechanic or the model of the whatever, that I can keep scaling and duplicating. I'm franchising that model.
Right.
So now whenever I add a new mechanic, I'm going stamp, do it again, stamp, do it again, stamp, do it again. Right?
Right.
And that is what a lot of other businesses are not doing, is they're not breaking it down to the smallest unit so that they can have confidence when they need to hire a new employee, when they need to buy another piece of equipment, when they need to take on more. They haven't got a model to say, I know that this is going to work, and have faith in the numbers and in themselves to start scaling up their business.
Yeah.
That's what they need to do. And when I say quantify, that's what I mean. Okay. Third one, for example, restaurants. Never owned a restaurant. Don't have a clue. A couple of friends that own restaurants, talk to them often. I think basically with a restaurant, what you want to do is potentially break it down either by customer interaction or by ticket sale. Right. So if the average customer comes in, they sit down, their ticket's $100 for the night, couple comes in, has dinner. This is how much the plate costs. This is how much the server costs to serve them. This is how much the floor cost for them to be in this space. This is how much we turn them over. And so we need to get this many tickets per night. Our average ticket is $100. And then we need to have 100 people come through here. Can we turn 100 people through this space per day? What's maximum capacity? How much capacity percentage are we typically filling? And then what are we making per ticket? And how do we make that profit? What is our overhead costs? What of our, advertising, marketing, everything else that goes into that? How do you break that down per ticket somehow? Right.
And that actually, having all that stuff actually informs like the server. Okay, servers, you should be visiting this person 5 times during a seating. So now and you should be going to them and getting them out by an X amount of time. So go ask them. You don't shoo them out, but you ask them. Yeah.
Well, and then how
the bill and things like
from
that.
Knowing that small unit number, you can work on becoming more efficient, or at least you'll be able to quantify how efficient you are.
Yeah.
Right? If we believe that our average customer stays here for 60 minutes from the time they enter the door until they leave, and then we have this many seats and this many tables, and you can maybe break it down by customer. So when you seat a table of 5, like that might even be smaller in my mind. You seat a table of 5, there's this many customers on that ticket. So we actually had 100 head go through here tonight, or 200 head go through here tonight, right? And the average plate, I would be tempted more to break it down per plate. Now thinking about it, is like, okay, per individual plate order. And I don't know if you call that a ticket, but I'm not talking per receipt. I'm talking per individual plate.
Right. Yeah.
This plate makes me this much money. This plate makes me this much money. And one server can serve this many people per hour. And then you know how many servers you can afford, and you can know the maximum capacity of your restaurant and go on from there. So if you're I think a lot of restaurant owners they just open their restaurant. They have this many seats. They know that they make really good food and their experience is really nice. And then they hope for the best.
Yep.
It scares the death out of me to think that way, but I think that is actually a lot more common way of attacking it than most people think. And I can't even imagine going into a restaurant business without quantifying all that and having some numbers in my head before. I might be completely naive when I go into that, but if I start quantifying it from day one, my data is going to get more and more and more and more accurate.